Hello friends, and welcome once again to the Financial Literacy. It is brought to you by the Financial Literacy Foundation. My name is Chriswell Baloyi, and I'm glad to be with you today. Before we go on, let me first appreciate our senior pastor, Pastor Joylene, and our general overseer, Pastor Strike, for giving us this opportunity to be in your rooms, to be in your life today. Thank you very much, and welcome, and let us get straight to the point. This is the 7th episode in our quest to financial literacy. We spoke in the past regarding money and money management, and last week we specifically spoke about investing right to get results. And as we were talking last week, some of the things that we started introducing was giving us the background and a foundation to today's talk, which is what I've decided to call this today's talk to say, mind your estate. Yes, today we want to talk about estate planning and managing all the investments and all the money that we have been talking about. This is inspired by a scripture which you find in Proverbs 13 verse 22, and it says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. My friend, what are you doing in order to ensure that beyond your children, your inheritance reaches such people? Your inheritance reach to a point of your grandchildren, because it is assumed in the word of God that your children you are already taking care of. So we are interested also in making sure that our children's children are well taken care of. And in so doing, we need to ensure that we have a proper estate planning. We need to have this exercise done and done well in order to get good results out of it. Why are we so concerned about estate planning, and why are we so concerned about making sure that our assets passes on to the next generation and the third generation, to be specific? It is because upon your death, you are disposing your estate, you are disposing your assets. And when you dispose assets, there is a lot of issues that we need to take care of. And specifically, there are a lot of taxes and expenses that need to be taken care of. And I will want to maybe make mention or list some of the taxes and expenses that you will often find in estate planning. Number one expense or tax is estate duty. Estate duty is charged at 20% of the dutiable estate. So in other words, for you to be able to pass on your estate to the next generation, you are more likely to be paying 20% of that estate to SARS. And the next tax is capital gains tax. And the next is donations tax. And the next is executors fees. Donations tax, it's at 20% also of the assets that are donated to the beneficiaries. Executors fees, it's charged at 3.5% plus VAT. That comes to 4.025%. We have conveyancing fees that will be paid. We have got master's fees. We've got valuation fees. We've got other administration fees that will be paid. And above all, we've got your liabilities that will need to be taken care of. So your estate will not pass on to the next generation or to your beneficiaries before your liabilities are paid. Yes, you don't die with your debts, but your debts need to be paid off before we can transfer your estate. And if you are married out of community of property with inclusion of accrual, you are gonna have an accrual claim most likely against your estate. So all these things and others that I may not have mentioned today, they play a very important role in a reason for us to sit and talk today and talk about how then do I plan my estate. Is it possible to estimate some of these taxes? Is it possible to estimate some of these expenses? Yes, it is. It is very possible. Is it necessary to do this? Yes, it is necessary, because yes, you're gonna die one day. Definitely you're gonna die. It might be that your parents may have passed on in life and they never left you anything. It might be because they didn't have anything. But chances are, as we develop, we tend to become better than our parents. So we tend to have assets that we may wish to leave unto our next generation. So these things become very important to look at. Now, how do we go about? What do we consider in estate planning? First of all, we need to understand that estate planning is part of your financial planning. So you need to understand your financial situation as it is currently in order to be able to do a proper estate planning. You need to be able to understand that estate planning, it's a process that must or should consider your family circumstances. It's a process that must include or consider your marital regime. When we speak of marital regime, that's where we talk of whether you are married in community of property or out of community of property, or out of community with or without accrual system, whether it is customary marriages or whether it is religious marriages. All these different types of marriages, they take a very significant, if not a center place in determining your estate planning process. And let us also bear in mind that it takes time to wind up an estate. So these things become very important, because without considering them and taking action today, it might even take longer than the necessary time to wind up your estate. And if you don't take these things serious, one of the things that will cause the length of the time in winding up your estate, it might be that you have to be exhumed in order to be able to deal with some of the things that you may have left messy. So when we don't do proper estate planning, we are leaving our surviving family members in a mess. And that may not show love. No matter how we are providing for them now. If you provide for them now but fail to provide on how your estate should be wound up and how those assets should be transferred, then we may as well say that we have failed. So estate planning, it's not drawing up a will. Drawing up a will, it's part of estate planning. But when we say estate planning, we are not necessarily referring to drawing up a will. You may draw up a will without planning your estate. That might be as dangerous as planning your estate and failing to draw up a will. Can I say this again? Drawing up a will without planning your estate, it's dangerous, and it's as dangerous as planning your estate and failing to draw up a will. So these two things, they go hand in hand. So don't even dare try to draw up a will if you did not do proper estate planning. And don't do estate planning without drawing a will. That's simply what we are saying. So what is an estate? Let's start diving deeper now. We will talk about issues, but given time, we will come to a particular limit. But let us find out what exactly is an estate. The word estate simply means everything that you own. That is your assets, deemed assets, and everything that belongs to you, minus what you owe. So it is what you own less than what you owe. That difference, it is your estate. Now, what is estate planning? Estate planning refers to how your assets will be distributed or disposed. We said when you die, in terms of law, you are regarded as having disposed your estate. We did mention what estate is. We'll come deeper into it once more. But when you die, you have disposed. You are not different from having sold. So when you die, you sell to your deceased estate. And your deceased estate must be able to distribute such assets. So estate planning, it is a process of determining how your assets will be disposed after you have died. And everyone, no matter rich, no matter how poor, everyone, irrespective of the age, need to plan his estate. We don't plan an estate when we're about to die. Of course, if you have an opportunity to plan when you are on your deathbed, you are lucky, my friend. But we need to do that even before. Because isn't it we know that we're going to die? Yes, one day we're going to die. So let's die in style. Let's plan on how your things will be distributed upon your death. Why is this important? Estate planning is as essential for quite a number of reasons. And I will want to mention some of those few reasons. It is to ensure that your dependents have an income. So when you conduct or when you do a proper estate planning exercise, we come to determine how your dependents are going to have an income. It is to ensure that certain specific people that you choose inherit your assets or specific assets or certain assets. It is such that you are able to plan on how to pay such things as the taxes and other things that we have mentioned earlier on, the expenses that relate to your transference of the estate to the next heirs. It is to ensure that your debts and estate expenses are paid. It is also to ensure that you protect your business interests. So these are the reasons, among other things, that should give you a kick to say, I want to get up and do my estate planning. Who should do an estate planning? We have mentioned that irregardless of the age, irregardless of the amount of wealth that you have, everyone must have an estate planning process. Everyone must have an estate planning done. So in other words, you are never too young. You can never be too old. Everyone, even as young as when you own a teaspoon, you need to do an estate planning. So there are various steps that need to be taken into consideration in order to do proper estate planning. There's about 6 steps. Maybe with time, we will be able to deal with 2, if not 3 today. We will see where we end. But step number 1 is that your financial plan need to be in line with your estate planning. So like we said, estate planning is part of your financial planning. Your financial planning must include estate planning. Why is this important? You need to be able to establish how much you own and how much you owe. Many people, we live, we buy assets, we accumulate assets, but we have never sat down to take stock of the assets that we have. Estate planning will help us to achieve that. So it should form part of your overall financial planning, and it should be not necessarily about counting things and leave it at that, but it should be also determining their values. Why is this important? Remember, different assets are taxed differently. You will now and then hear the word tax. Why? Because financial assets and non-financial assets are taxed, and they are taxed on different tax regimes. We spoke of capital gains tax, we spoke of income tax the other day. Today we also spoke of estate duty and donations tax. All these things will come to the party. So we need to understand, what assets do you have? How are they going to be taxed upon your death, so that we can make provision for that? One of the biggest institutions or people that you will pay, or your estate is going to pay, is SARS. So we need to determine how we are going to pay that. The importance of estate planning, it is also to be able to minimize some of these taxes, because we can have the same size or equal estates, but eventually pay different taxes to SARS, depending on how we have structured our estate plan. Are you with me? Thank you very much. So, a thorough financial needs analysis need to be done. A thorough financial needs analysis need to be conducted in order to be able to come to the position where we say, yes, I know what assets I have. I know who do I owe. Who do you owe? It's important. Why? Because upon your death, whoever you owe must be paid. They are letting you run around now even when you still owe them, because there is still a hope that you will pay. But the moment you die, your debts must be paid up, and your estate will never be transferred to the next beneficiaries before we pay those people that you owe, big or small. We talk of personal loans, we talk of bonds, we talk of even the smallest debt. It must be paid. So we need to get into that process. So why is this important? Once more, it's because of the tax. We said different assets are taxed differently. On the assets that you own, if I may ask you, do you know how much tax you are going to pay upon your death? That is why the answer that you have given me, it's the same reason why we are talking today about the importance of estate planning. You might be asking, what assets are you talking about? We've got two classes of assets. We've got what we call property. Property, I'm not referring to a house, although a house is one of them. But property, we are referring to what we call corporeal and incorporeal assets. That could be your immovable property, it could be your home, it could be movable property such as furniture, vehicles, and so on. Incorporeal assets, we are referring to the intangible paper assets such as your shares, your bonds, your unit trusts, and those type of things. And we are also referring to limited rights, where we talk of usufructs and other things such as that. Then we have also a class of assets, what we call deemed property. Deemed property includes your life insurance. Yes, life insurance, it's part of your asset. It's part of your asset for estate planning purposes. You see why now it is important for one to have a life cover, for instance, because it is an asset. It is a big asset. Some of us, our life covers are the biggest assets that we have. So you might say, but I've got nothing to inherit my children with. But you might have 200 rand, 300 rand, or 500 rand that you can buy a life insurance policy. Why don't you do that? So that your children can inherit that asset. So we are referring to that. So we've got property and deemed property. So in going forward, having spoken of a life cover, you need to be able to know if we were to take life cover so that we can increase our estate or our assets. You need to be able to know how much life cover you need to have. It's not just about taking a 500,000 cover or a 1 million cover, but we need to know, we need to determine. So the estate planning process will help us to arrive at that. Why? Because we spoke of the people that you owe, that they must be paid up. Where do you think money will come from to pay up your bond, to pay up your car, to pay up your personal loan that you are currently paying monthly installments on? It could come from your life cover. So first of all, we need to do calculations to determine how much do you owe in total. That is the minimum life cover that you must have. Then we can top it up by other needs, such as the amount needed to provide for the income to the family. Also the amount that you need as cash to be inherited by your family members. So that is how we will calculate and arrive at the size of the cover that you need to have. So you need to be able to have sufficient life cover that will be able to pay off your debts. Have you heard when it was said, no, his estate is illiquid? That may mean that you do have assets such as houses, cars, and other things, but there is no liquidity. In other words, there is no cash in the estate. How are we going to deal with the administration of your estate? The life cover. And we are not referring to the life cover that you have nominated a beneficiary, but we are referring to a life cover that will pay into the estate, because it is your estate that will be owing the bank. It is the estate that will be owing that shop where you bought clothes and furniture and every other thing that you owe. So this policy is payable unto the estate. So in other words, what I'm saying is, when you have a life cover, it is not always good to have that life cover with a beneficiary nominated, because when I'm the beneficiary nominated, I have no obligation to be taking that money and pay off your estate. So let us bear in mind that such type of things, we need to sit down and do thorough analysis, thorough calculations. We can as well have one policy, but a portion of it is nominated to go to the estate, and a portion of it is nominated to go to either my spouse or my children. So that is very important. Then the second part, step number 2, is drawing up a will. We will be closing with that today. The drawing up of a will, or what we also call a testament. Why is this important? It is very important as part of estate planning, because it is in a will where you will be able to put in all those other nitty-gritties that are important with regard to the administration of the estate, with regard to the taking over of the assets by your beneficiaries. And this drawing up of a will must have to do with your personal circumstances, your family circumstances, your assets circumstances, and quite a number of things. So what goes into drawing up of a will? What must we be considering? We must be considering things that might change over time. And what could change? It could be your personal circumstances in terms of marriage or divorce. It could be a new baby born at home. It could be a spouse dying. It could be even acquiring a major asset. It could be the changes in the tax legislation. Yes, so it is very important that when we do estate planning, we continually review that plan, because tax rules changes. It was in 2002 where donations tax was and the rates were changed. It was just a year or two ago where estate duty figures or percentages were changed also. It was also there was also a change on the minimum amount which can be going without a duty payable. So all these things changes, and as they change, we must be able to respond with the changes to suit in or to fit in with the new changes in the legislation. Where can you draw a will? We will talk further as we go, because drawing of a will is a very important aspect in the estate planning. But let me conclude in saying, where can you draw a will? In banks you can find wills that you can draw, but let me say, avoid simply going to a stationery shop and buy a pre-drafted will and sign, because your will must be able to comply with very important rules. Because even if you may have a will drafted, if it is not properly done, you will be as good as having died intestate. Dying intestate is where you die without a will. So with that, perhaps let us leave it at that, but let me leave you with something that you can consider until we are able to meet next time. Is that, do you have a will in place? Or is it that one that you bought at that famous shop? Is it a valid will, the one that you have, if you do have a will? Does it protect your heirs or your beneficiaries against unforeseen circumstances, such as their future marriages, in the event where they owe other people, and so on and so on? Will your estate be able to pass to the third generation as it is envisaged by the word of God? A good man leaving inheritance to his children's children. Do you have an estate plan? And if you don't, There are the numbers on the screen. Let us talk. Let us engage in this. But allow me to thank you, friends, for those who are engaging. Words of encouragement we are getting, and those who are coming with queries, and I believe we are able to resolve some of the queries. It's your queries that are remaining. Thank you very much. May God bless you. Have a great day. Thank you.